started today with the cool zone topic. I wanted to do something. I was looking at some of these images of like art installation or contemporary art or something like that. That's little galleries. They have it working now. That's cool. Yeah, I haven't had time to look into it, but usually within a couple days or weeks after the release, the Redshift folks will get it sorted. So I wanted to try to do something with, it's a dev type of thing. There's a few extra little hacks, some scripts you have to use. So yeah, I was thinking about doing something with these RBD boxes, and kind of keeping it minimal or simplified, and seeing what I could get with using the packed RBD solver to simulate just a bunch of kind of little boxes or stuff like that. I don't know if you guys use specific. I usually just stick to Google image search, but sometimes if you go to like Pinterest or Dribble or Instagram or stuff like that, you can find some other more tag-based references and things like that. It's a cool place to check out those places. They do a good job of organizing things by I don't know, the algorithm or whatever that they use underlying their search or whatever works pretty good. Name your cheese. How's it going? I'm doing pretty good. Excited for the weekend here. There's the one Saul Lewitt. I think I've talked about him a little bit before on stream. He's a really cool artist. He was prominent, I think, in like the 50s or 60s or something like that, and did kind of really cool these like procedural looking sculptures. And some of it is really similar to like the way Houdini works or the thought process of that, like this variations of incomplete open cubes. This is kind of like a top network or like wedges, like trying out each parameter to get each possible outcome. He's a really good, really like a lot of his work. Nightmare Cheese, thank you for the Twitch Prime. 2 months, let's go. Getting some veterans in the chat, the 5 months, the 2 months. I think there's some six monthers floating around there somewhere. Old school tops. Yeah, I think a lot of this was like pen and paper stuff. So you could find this in certain galleries. Like here they have the SF MoMA or whatever, and they've had some of his exhibits in there. He also does some, not all of it is like sculptural. Some of it's just like canvas paint based or whatever. But it's, don't want to go on too big of a tangent of his workflow, but he was basically saying like the art is the instructions, or is similar to kind of pseudocode or that kind of stuff. So it would just be kind of equations or the steps you would need to draw these lines, and then his assistants would go in and do the drawings. So it's before the computer, but a similar idea of kind of the instructions is what makes things interesting almost. Demon Case, thank you for the 3 months. Twitch Prime, Amazon Prime, Prime Gaming. Yes, I'm gonna get started and try some stuff kind of like this for right now. I'll just keep this search pinned or whatever, so people join in the middle of the stream or they're skipping around or whatever, they'll have an idea of what I have in my head. A box. Put a box inside of a box. I already had one. All right. So I'm just going to do some extrusions to get the kind of wireframe thing set up. I don't know how these edges got all messed up. Maybe I think up here, instead of doing distance, you do inset. That should work a little bit better. The chain node, I haven't had a chance to play with it. I did see Mattistella, CG Wiki. I think he's started to make a page breaking down some of the new workflows, kin effects, and I think he was starting to do the chain swap. If you go to that link, maybe not. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like he had spent a long time trying to do this kind of unrolling effect. I think a lot of people try. This is something they want to do this thing in Houdini, and they realize it's like super difficult to do it with just inside of SOPs. But I think with the kin effects, the joint chains, spine rigs and stuff like that, it's super easy to make that kind of unrolling motions and all that stuff. I had done a similar thing with like the unrolling a long time ago, but I kind of cheated. I did it with like a particle system. So I had these emitter spray a bunch of points and then another collider rolling the other way that was set to like stick-on collision. And then it's like replaying the animation in reverse. It was a long time ago when I was first learning Houdini. It was my amateur approach of doing that type of unrolling animation. All right. So yeah, I think instead of doing the distance for the initial extrusion, you just do inset, and it does a better job of keeping the right angles or the flat edges. And then this one is just do output back. Now we have a box. Maybe doing a bevel. Get some nicer kind of rounded or smoothed edges. It's just a bit fancy or whatever, so you subdivide it a few times or smooth it or whatever, you'll get just looks a little bit less CG or less crisp or whatever. It's a bit more like plastic or something like that. Usually at the end of if I'm just making a little tool, like a geometry that I'm going to reuse or whatever, at the end of my chain, I'll do a match size scale to fit to put it inside of a unit box. If you're doing like instancing or things like that, generally usually I'll do uniform scale as well. but you just want to kind of make everything a unit scale, or unitize the scale of it. And then if you do further randomizations with p-scale, you aren't doing like multiplications on top of scales. Everything, the end result is more predictable or whatever. That's just why I usually do the match size at the end. All right, this is gonna be box. Just call this the high res. So if you want a low res representation of this or something, probably don't want to be doing the poly bevel. Just do a reference copy of this node. And do the last few steps as well. So then this is like the low res representation. It's 64 points versus 3,000 or something. If you do end up instancing a lot, you might want to be working with the low res in the viewport, and then for render time, you could switch to the high res or something like that. VFX ASMR. All right, so I'm gonna do a pack node, and then the assemble to assign the name attribute. So if you're using packed RBDs, you need a name attribute on the geometry. You should be good with it. Let's see if it works now. So up here, I'll just do first context geometry. It's a nice shortcut that this RBD node has, instead of having to do the op input path, more tedious expression. That it's just some nodes they've gone in and added this as a shortcut for it. How long have you been working on Houdini? I think like that video of the carpet I had up a minute ago. It was like 8 years ago, and that was when I first started learning Houdini as like an independent study in college. That was probably right around the time that I just first started opening it up and just trying to teach it to myself. We didn't have a Houdini course at my school, so maybe 8 years using Houdini, and then 5 or 6 years doing it professionally for freelance or full-time work and all that stuff. Let's see. So one thing I did was turn on inherit velocity from point velocity. That will make it respect the V and W attributes if you have them. So like W is the angular spin or rotation of things. And then this is in degrees, so you usually have to do a pretty high number to get like a nice initial rotation. If you just do something like velocity is in meters per second, let me reset this. Maybe do some drag on the spin. I think it would slow down a little bit more over time. Let me take a look at the cache. Usually I'll turn off sleeping if I'm just debugging things. All right, and maybe it was just I didn't have the real-time toggle at the bottom turned on. But yeah, usually I find that you need to have this to be a pretty big number if you want like a really fast initial spin. I think this is essentially how many degrees per second it will be spinning. So like if you do 355, something close to 360, it would do a full rotation between, I don't know, maybe it's a little faster than that. All right, so this is W, it's the angular rotation. Whoa. And then one thing you can do that's pretty cool is if you do the pop source, you can actually use this to emit or create more rigid body objects. If you just do all geometry, because you want to get the actual like pack primitives. If you do points or the other stuff, it might skip it. So like this, the way it's set up, it should be, I think I just need to set my geometry source. So now we'll be creating another one each frame. I think it will try to kind of like tell the solver not to solve the penetrations, the overlap. This is the way that bullet solver works, is it will treat stuff that's created already inside of each other as like, it will tell it not to collide with itself to avoid kind of explosions or instabilities like that. But you can override it if you do the found overlap. It's an integer attribute, so you just make sure you have the I before it. Then if you set it to 1, and now you can see it's actually trying to move them apart or separate them. And then I think there's another issue I'm having right now is that the bullet solver, it does this convex hole, or it kind of like shrink wraps the collision geometry. So if I look at the guide geometry, it's treating all of these boxes like they're closed. It doesn't, you would have to do maybe concave as your geometry representation for the collision, but it can become pretty slow when you start to have like hundreds of colliders. So I'm going to do another representation. So we have the high res, the low res, and then I can build something. Concave is pretty heavy. Almost crashed. Yeah, it can be, I think, pretty memory intensive and all that stuff. So one thing I can do is just take the starting box, do the convert line to kind of wireframe it. Then if you do facet with, I think, unique points, just look at the primitive numbers. The point numbers. So it just uniques the points at the corners, so they're no longer connected. And then with the primitive node, just use this as a hack to scale down the length of the lines. It's just a quick way to get the scale each line or each primitive towards its centroid. And then I think I can do wireframe. I don't need the round corners. So this can be our collision representation for bullet, because it's built out of unique tubes. It can pretty quickly build a geometry representation or collision representation for each shape pretty easily. Let me just do the match size again. And then this one will be, just call it RBD proxy. Then I think I can just move this chain over. And instead of doing let me make sure I know what's going on here. All right. I might need to I don't know if this is 100% needed, but I think the bullet solver prefers the name attribute to be on the point level of the geometry. Enjoying the nature sound. Stuff should be showing up. Just need to be solve on creation frame. Nick X, yes, of course. Happy to share the knowledge. All right, it looks like it's working. Maybe it was just my display geometry. I had that off. I think that was my misconception. We actually don't need this. Can get rid of it again. So then this time, if you just do create convex hole per set of connected primitives, then you'll get each individual tube or each individual like island or 3D geometry will get itself shrink wrapped. So we're much closer now to our wireframe box representation. Ooh. So now we can actually kind of nest these or build little chains of boxes. And then if you want to get back to your high res or switch to our different resolutions, you can do it with the transformed pieces, I think. We'll just start with the low res. I think we want to pack it. So it will match, I think by default it will match these by the point number. So this one's just getting moved to match the position of the 0th or the first point, the only point. You can do copy node here, and then just make a spare input and link that to the DOP network. So then if I say endpoints -1. The -1 is saying how many points are in this spare input or the DOP network. So it will just make as many copies or make as many boxes as we're simulating. And then this transform pieces can find all the starting pieces to move into the final like simulated positions. So if we want to switch to high res, can do that pretty quickly or easily as well. You worked at ILM. Yes, I don't know how many people they still have employed at their main location, but it's pretty fun times. Was the Presidio campus here in San Francisco. They had a lot of the lore, like the costumes and props and stuff like that. Since Disney bought them, George Lucas still owns the lease, so Disney is still leasing this from him. So they're still consolidating like office space, and they might be moving locations again. But for the time that I was there, it was a lot of fun. It's a really nice campus that they have. Even the cafeteria, you can see like the Golden Gate Bridge from it. Walking around outside, it's really kept up. It's in it. Basically, the Presidio is like a national park. So the grounds of it and everything like that. This is like a ranch or something further up north. But yeah, it's just this used to be like a military base for World War II or something like that, and then it got converted into a national park where all the barracks and stuff like that turned into the ILM buildings. All right. So we'll do a first distribution of the scene. If you do !hip in the chat, you could see instructions if you want to get these different shelf tools. The hip sync is just the standard one that will fetch the latest. Then if you go to the !hip in the chat, you can see there's also one that Jabram made that will give you a list of the history of sessions that I've shared. So these are some cool ones that get connected, and there's like their own independent little island or something like that. Just gonna pin the view up here so I can still visualize the high res, but work inside of the DOP network. And let's do maybe the wind. The pop wind is a little bit different than pop force. Wind will basically define like the ambient motion, and the speed of the pieces or the speed of the geometry or particles will try to align themselves or match that wind speed. The pop force just keeps kind of adding, boosting, adding noise or turbulence to things. So that's a little bit different how they work. Good try, pop force. It got me. Sometimes the new wiring style, you think you have something connected. Yeah, so some of them are, that's what I was spending a lot of time with the collision representation. The default collision, if you don't do convex hull per set of connected primitives, it will just shrink wrap the entire box. And then you'll never be able to get them linking, or if you ever simulated like chains, you've probably ran into the same thing. Will collision ignore help them? You could do collision ignore if you want them to separate. I think it's pretty cool having them get stuck together, and it's kind of like a growth simulation or something like that, like, or even similar to some of the kin effects stuff with like branches, spines, like tentacles or whatever being formed. But if you want, there's a Vex point attribute. You look at the this is a compilation of like attributes that you could use to control RBD simulation. Then they do have collision group, collision ignore. You could specify point attributes if you wanted, like, if you have different shapes and you wanted certain ones linking up or something like that. Nightmare Cheese, you're back. You didn't miss too much. In the chat, I did share a link to get up to speed with this file. Or if you have the shelf tools installed, you could see it clicking those. So initially, intersecting objects don't collide until they don't intersect anymore. I'm not doing any super fancy logic with this stuff. I'm basically starting with this one shape and just keep emitting it over and over again. With this found overlap point attribute, the bullet solver will solve or move initially intersecting objects to not be inside of each other anymore. That's the only bit of like kind of fanciness or whatever that's happening. So without the found overlap, it will treat intersecting objects like they're kind of permanently stuck together. So it does that to, if you're doing like building destructions or stuff like that, they're trying to keep like little splinters from flinging and shooting off all over the place if your model isn't 100% set up properly and there's some initial penetration in it. But sometimes we're doing these more abstract or motion graphics kind of effects. You want that kind of like explosiveness or the popping or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I haven't moved the emitter around or whatever, but it could be cool to just maybe try a transform. You do just move the pivot, offset it in one axis, and then if you do a rotation, you'll start to get like a circle or whatever, because it's no longer pivoting around itself. It's kind of like offsetting the pivot is like offsetting the handle of like a cooking pot or something like that. It's like the grip is just going to form a bigger circle when you spin the center of it, essentially. Then just do a faster. Such an easy trick. Yeah, there's other ways that you could do it with, like, you could do maybe just in the translate, like a sine and a cosine or something like that, but sometimes this is just a shortcut. So I'm worried this might break. Looks like it didn't. I'm good. sometimes if you move the pieces around after you pack them, the pivot attribute and stuff gets messed up. But they have a lot of fancy Vex stuff they're doing internally to manage like the pivot and the primitive intrinsics and all those matrices and fancy stuff. So it's a pretty nice node that inside of it, it's just doing a bunch of Vex and wrangles and stuff, but it is really nice because it takes care of like a lot of the headaches of matching transforms and pivots and rotations and all that stuff. Vegan nuts. Glad you made it. So the other thing, take a look at, see if these are sorted by the name. Trying to see, it might be the ID attribute. Okay. So it does look like, because I'm using the pop source, it's creating an age, but it's not getting like kept track of. Music is a weeb. Thank you for letting me know. Let me know if that's better. Yeah, I think for YouTube and stuff like that, it will make it a little bit easier for people to follow along in the future if it's not super obnoxious. All right, cool. Yeah, and then for the longer like workshops that I do, or the more pre-planned lecture stuff, I usually will just turn off the music because I would assume more people are like going back and getting caught up with that. Sine function on the y-axis kind of works too. Yeah, so if you want to do sine, you can. It's just a bit more typing and stuff to manage. Basically, the sine wave, you can do sine of time frame for x. Then you'll get like a pendulum effect in that direction. Whoops. So then in the z, if you do cosine instead of that, then you'll get like a spiral. Ooh, been doing some these kind of like nested boxes or whatever. Silhouette inspired stuff today. Maybe then it has to be fit between a certain range. So yeah, you could do the sine and cosine in the translation to move it around. It doesn't do the spinning, like the alignment or the rotation of it that way. But this is a cool way to kind of do like a spiral effect or whatever. So people are making like a slinky or a coiled cord. They'll usually do the sine, cosine this way. But yeah, I usually will just to do less typing or whatever. Sometimes I'll do the pivot offset. You can as well do just like attribute noise or something like that. If you just add noise to the position, the animated center, you'll kind of get like a curl noise or this, I guess it's just like a standard turbulence, FBM. So you could do a somewhat like more procedural drifting pattern or something like that. Like these being made with Houdini instructions. Yeah, you can get the the op script code or whatever that will give you the expressions needed to the expression instructions needed. So I might try to do a little bit more interesting method of like sourcing or creating some of these boxes. Boxes inside of boxes. Do you do the divisions method to do like a skeleton or a wireframe of the boxes? And I'm just maybe gonna do like resample to add more points. Just do it by polygon edge to make sure you're keeping the corners. Sometimes without it, you might miss. If your resolution is too low or something, you might miss like a corner and it might get like rounded. And then I think they renamed this node. Sometimes I have trouble finding it. We do distance along geometry. Let's just make a starting group. Will be the point number 0. Let's see where it is. Primitives, we want to do points. Is that where it ended up? Okay, it looks like it's like the lower left corner. So if you do that, we'll measure distance from the starting point or the point in the group. It looks like I might need to maybe do a fuse so that all of the edges or the corners are connected. I guess surface and edge in this case are the same because it's just a wireframe geometry. I go by Zach. So yeah, if you just do, I think, op script -r obj box1, there's all the Saw-Louet style expressions. This is the H script things to recreate your network or whatever, with all the setting the colors or the naming of things, all the parameters, the values, wiring stuff together. How to fracture or even cube-shaped pieces without Boolean shatter. You've shown that before. I can't remember the method right now. So if you have a regular repeating point lattice like this, it will give you boxes. Basically, you could use Voronoi fracture. If you give it a regular point cloud or a grid of points, it will give you outputs of boxes. Maybe just with a sphere. So if you do polygon, then the Voronoi fracture, don't need interior surfaces for right now. So these are the cutting points, and then let me get the other one. We'll give you boxes or tiles like that. I'm just cutting from a 2D plane, but if we did switch to boxes using these divisions, then this would give you like a 3D point lattice. Might have done too many here. All right, I don't know what happened. It was, somehow it got overwhelmed. So yeah, it kind of depends, but this can be a pretty good way. And then I think even with interior surface, you can cut them. You'll get boxes like that. So once you jitter the cell points, then you'll see it goes back to the typical Voronoi. But as long as you have a regular 3D repeating like point lattice, you'll get perfect cubes. If you just want to deviate a little bit from it, this is kind of like a cobbler, cobblestone street or something like that. And then just the full randomness is like the typical Voronoi. Smooth melt sim of a hard surface object with a lot of hard edges and detail, maintaining hard surface. That's a pretty big issue or problem to solve. I think the only advice I would say right now is just doing like VDB smoothing that would be based off of certain features so that you're not smoothing like the edges or the hard edges. It depends a lot with like what you can get away with. Sometimes if you have the original geometry, you can mask it by the VDB. So like if you're converting these fractured pieces into a VDB, you get some of the rounding and stuff like that. And then if you smooth them, you kind of run into even more issues. So then if you do another VDB here from the original source and just do like reshape to dilate things. So you could take the original stuff and do like VDB combine intersection. So this is cutting out the excess or the overlap or something like that. This is a method people use sometimes if you're pouring like liquid metal onto a hard surface thing, then you can make it lie closer on the surface instead of like sticking through it. But that smooth melt, there's a ton of issues you can run into it with it. Generally you need to be doing a good amount of like post simulation tweaks or cheats or stuff like that. If you try to brute force it with just really high resolution in the simulation, you'll probably run out of memory or will just be too slow to work on. So I'm gonna do attribute noise on the P, the position. This is what I'll usually do sometimes. We'll make a copy of the original existing position to copy it into the rest attribute, and then deform the position to do my distance measurements. And then if you just at the end do a swap, you can replace the original position with the rest. If I go back to you get the visualizer for this. So if you have enough distortion, maybe I need to So as I'm adding noise to some of this stuff, I think I just maybe need like a higher frequency or something like that. You can start to see it's breaking up the gradient, so it's not perfectly aligned, like it's just a little bit distorted. So the distance is being calculated on these curvy lines. VDB morph by attribute. So if you do a mask, all these nodes will support like smooth, reshape. They do support a mask. This is an alpha mask. That's just another VDB or a volume that's like an alpha channel or just a 0 to 1 amount. I don't know if I need another resample. I don't think that's going to help too much. Just trying to get a little bit more detail out of that. The edges, like a little bit more crunchiness. Sometimes I'll do the shortest path node.
Welcome to the internet.
I'm just gonna keep going with this distance right now. I think it's good enough. So if we keep going in these other kind of spaces, what I can do here is set the position from that distance attribute that gets created. So in world space now we have like how far it is from that starting point or point number 0. So if you start to do cuts, could start with like trimming this area and then do another swap. Just want to keep another copy of the rest. Then you can kind of cut stuff in 3D space. This is why I was trying to get a little bit more crunchiness out of the distance attribute. Should be good. So if I do it's kind of like dissolving things. We could do another clip going the other way. I'm just going to link up these expressions. So this one will be slightly higher. So we have two clipping planes that are slightly offset, that are like scrolling up and down. And then over time is kind of like revealing the box that way. Could be cool. So what I was wasting all that time with is that's gonna be my new emitter instead of just like a point drifting around or whatever. Gonna do scatter some points. And maybe every frame just do a new seed. So if I animate this distance, go from frame 1 to 72, over time we'll get little emission points for boxes. You can put $F divided by $F end. Yeah, that will work. It will give you a normalized result that goes automatically from 0 to 1. The reason I did a keyframe, because visually this number here is like unnormalized, or it's going from 0 to 24. Because I've added noise to it, yeah, so there are steps if you are really building a rebuildable, like a reusable setup or something you want to be certain when it's going to end. If you just do promote down here, maybe with distance to detail to find the maximum. Yeah, here I could procedurally find that this is 22. And then if I didn't want to deal with keyframes, you could do $FF. But I think you want to do usually F end -1. So first frame, it's a little bit above 0, and then the last frame, maybe I didn't want to do -1. Last frame, it's exactly 1. I think FF, this is the one you want it to be -1. Just depends if you want it to start on 0 or not, or whatever. Then if you do another like spare parameter, you get the promote. Whoops. So if you want to do it this way, you can link things up. So this is a 0 to 1 number, and then you could scale it to detail that spare input, dist, and then you should have a number that goes automatically up to 22. So it depends if you're doing something. This is the coolest thing. Yeah, this is an easy way. If you want to, another thing you can do is find the minimum. There's a lot of extra steps, but you do another spare input would be attribute promote 2. So this is maximum, this is minimum. You could do Studio Not War. How's it going? Fit 01. So fit 01 is saying you expect the input number to be between the 0 and 1 range. Then you just need to provide it the destination minimum and maximum. So the destination minimum would be this second spare input, and then the destination maximum would be the first spare input. So then this will automatically remap to min and max of your things that will automatically get retrieved. So yeah, that's of course good to do. I'm gonna just keep with the expressions for right now. I think with the animation, like having these handles can be helpful to have to tweak things. And the way I'm working right now is it's kind of just like a one-off, like a disposable thing, kind of an experiment. If you were making something that you were going to reuse for a sequence in a movie, like this effect would need to get put into 200 shots, then you definitely want to like automate as many of these steps as you can. The cool zone. Yes, I've been working off of this silhouette idea, trying out different ways to have an RBD simulation that's emitting boxes And then, because they're like wireframes like this or tubes or whatever. Yeah, I'll update everyone with the file. Just name this a little bit. So this is find max value. This will be the minimum value. And then this will be clip remap min max. So now this spare inputs or whatever, it's a little bit more clear as to what their the values that they're grabbing. So yeah, I was spending some time over here to make a new emitter. So instead of this one was just a point oscillate or rotating around the pivot position. What I was going to try to do now is I have these scattered points that light up across my wireframe cube, and then I'm going to emit RBD wireframe boxes from those points. Just try to like grow a wireframe or grow a structure over time. So this, we just call these source RBD spawn points. And I'm just gonna keep replicating or rebuilding things. Sometimes if you're doing experimentation or work in progress, like you want to preserve different steps in just different like modules or whatever. So that's what I'm gonna do right now. Just grab all that stuff. And then instead of just like the single box right here, we're packing like that. I think if I just do a copy to points, and then we get that, and all this other stuff, just leave it the same. Might be too many. All right, so just with the scatter, just do less. And I'm also gonna go in here and get rid of the turbulence, to set things up. I don't know how sometimes it's good to get rid of these if you just want to maybe I don't want like the distance or the rest position. That stuff might mess up. It might, those attributes might interfere with the simulation, so I just disable them. Yeah, I don't know if maybe it's the rest. Could have been this W attribute was messing things up as well. I don't know, this seems better. Can do maybe a random rotation, random direction. And if you just do a transform right here, this will be like scale. So we want these to be 0.25, quarter. Let's see what we get with that. Maybe these, I think this is gonna take a little bit of tweaking. So I think I want these to be a bit bigger. Trying to get them to connect up more easily. So I think maybe less of them, but bigger. Might be a little bit too big. Maybe doing maybe doing a slight jitter to the position as well. I think that might help encourage them to like link up or offset a little bit better. Just some cooler, longer structures. Let's see what happens with it. Just add the turbulence back in. So I'm going to try taking this box and maybe make it bigger. See what happens with this. So yeah, if I keep having to update this, I think it's going to be better to switch over to this method. This is just the procedural method to find the min and max dist. And then up here, just instead of going to the last frame, you just type in a number here, and that will be frame that the effect will end on. All right. Looks like the last frame, maybe because it's ending exactly at 1, it's having some issues. It just keeps emitting from there. You just take the last number and multiply it by something maybe like 1.05. We'll just slide the range of it to be a little bit higher than 1, or the existing maximum. Or you do it just to make sure it doesn't keep emitting at the end. I might try less boxes with more of them. Just trying to find something that looks visually more interesting. Looks like with a lot of them being bigger, they're overlapping and you can't really see the underlying skeleton too much. That's why I'm gonna try. This is why I'm trying with less of them. I think this is gonna be a little cooler. How many buddies are we making? What, 1,500? It's not too bad. Could do maybe even a little bit more. The packed RBD solver is really nice because you can just handle so many geometry almost in real time. Bullet it was like originally meant for real time, like video games, or the physics to get performed in real time, but then I think Side Effects originally had their own implementation, but doing massive destructions, it just became so much quicker to do it with Bullet than adding packed primitives. It just makes everything super optimized. I don't know, this Pop Force, it seems to be having some problems seeing it move things around. I don't know if it's the swirl size. I think it was too high frequency of a swirl size. Getting some more like tentacle flying spaghetti monster. What's happening? Alex, good to see you. But doing some stuff with these little RBD boxes. This might be too much turbulence. So yeah, I think this... Oh wow. Alex, thank you for the 4 months. Prime Gaming. Let's go. Submitting RBD objects. Yeah. If you want to get the updated file, if you use the pop source node with a RBD packed object, you can emit quite easily RBDs into an existing like simulation. So on the pop source, if your emission type is just all geometry, it will actually emit packed RBD objects into an existing simulation like this. So it's the same idea as like spawning particles into an existing simulation, but in this case we're emitting geometry or packed primitives. Let me see what happens with just make another pop force. Maybe this one will be the gravity. And we'll add a ground plane. Just see what happens if this is like stuff that's trying to actually stand up on like a table or something. Could be cool to see it starting to like try to support itself or sag or whatever. Oof. It's just as soon as it's created, it's destroying itself, falling apart. Yeah, it's just a sped up cycle of construction and demolition. So I might maybe just try tweaking some of the... So the other nice thing about doing these high-res like transform pieces, replacing the stuff after the simulation, you can do some tweaks on like the modeling and have it get applied, because it's like all based off of the underlying like, simulation. You can try out different, do some modeling operations or whatever after the result. So even if you start to render or light stuff and you find your stuff isn't like thick enough or something, you can make some changes and correct it without having to resimulate. I'm just trying one now with random rotations to see how that affects like the structural integrity of the boxes. It looks like you get a little bit more support, a little more organic. I don't know. I think it's a little more interesting visually to have them all lined up the same, starting as perfectly aligned boxes instead of random rotations. Maybe do a camera, kind of like isometric camera angle. Sometimes I'll do these longer lenses, especially like this one right here. All this lines are kind of parallel. And there isn't a lot of like perspective distortion, as you can tell this picture is taken with like a longer lens. So with these like geometric forms, can be cool to keep all the lines somewhat straight or whatever. And if I'm doing redshift, just make sure you have instance packed primitives turned on for rendering them. Let's see what happens. We start some renders. I think definitely want the GI bounce lighting. Looks like my ground plane is a little bit too small. I'd also offset it in the simulation, so it was just link this value up. Which RS GI to use when? I'm pretty much always using brute force for doing experimentation and stuff. Just link up the just gonna do this as an absolute reference so that the ground plane will match. So I'm almost always doing the brute force GI. If you're working on like something for a commercial or something like that, you might want to use the photon cache method of GI. What that does, all the other methods for Redshift are kind of doing like hacks or optimizations. So if you have a mesh, you will try to calculate the local GI just at a single point and then interpolate that value to nearby points. So it's kind of like texturing, like if you assign a color to a vertex, that will get interpolated to nearby areas. You can get flickering or you can run into issues if you haven't set it up properly. So that's why I usually will turn it off. With the GI, if you don't have enough sampling, you'll just get some additional noise, which will just always look like a little bit more natural or photographic. If you use these other methods, you can get some other like unnatural looking problems. So that's why I'm always just leaving it to brute force, which will just mean each ray of bounce lighting is like manually calculated. So the other methods are just meant as it's more of like a game engine approach of doing trying to bake the GI like a low res representation and then smooth it or interpolate it to get you that result. It's also with Redshift, because it's a GPU render, it's like really fast for doing it. So it's, I don't know, it's gonna be nice. It's a little easier to get by with doing it brute force. If I was doing mantra, this is like the diffuse limit on the mantra node is usually I would never set that to 3, but here you can go quite high with it and calculate like a lot of extra fanciness that way. I'm just trying to get some shadows here that aren't super distracting. I don't know, just doing like a somewhat top-down thing could be cool. All right. Let's try to put some shaders on things. We're gonna have 2 main shaders, just a box and ground. So the boxes, I think we could just start with the plastic. Try to get it linked up. I think I got it. If you want to check the material, sometimes just adding the color. It looks like we got our salmons. And then with the ground, I don't know if I want to look at one of the COO textures or whatever. There's a link to it on my, if you do ! resources in the chat, there's a link to this page. But you can find some nice flooring materials and stuff in it. I think I added the scan the world stuff. You had mentioned to me, Demon Case, the those statue scans or whatever. They were pretty cool. So I'm just looking for something to put on the ground that isn't going to be too distracting. Maybe this very desaturated wood. I'm just going with the 4K. You do 8K, but the really high resolution, sometimes you don't need all that. It will slow down GPU rendering because it has to upload like all those textures on the GPU every time. All right. So that wood is downloading. Should give us a few different passes. Let's just use this texture to bring them in. And then usually make sure you're enabling the gamma override for things like bump or spec that you don't want to be in sRGB color space. All right, I think we got it. So this is the displacement. Can put it in the proper slot. I think the scale, usually it's a bit too high. You also have color. Looks like I haven't UV'd the stuff properly on the ground. I'll just have to go back and do that. We have normal and roughness. So that's the roughness. For the color, you can either turn this off if you trust it to convert stuff, or you can manually tell it to go into use it as a sRGB texture. I think I'm just gonna turn those off. Then there's also the normal map. Those depend. Just usually try them both out and see what happens. Sometimes there's ways that I've actually used both of them as well. We'll just put our UV coordinates, can just do UV texture, and then the scale here will determine the repetitions and everything. Looked like maybe this default setting could be. that. All right. So on the grid, we'll start with tessellation and displacement. You usually need a lot of divisions with edge length. I don't know how slow this is going to get. You can use the wireframe node to visualize the render time tessellation. I think this is a case where just doing a bump map should be okay. It's not like the camera's right on the ground or anything like that. Let's just see what happens here. Yeah, so this is generating a really high resolution. Displacement. You can see it's working a little bit there, but super slow to build the scene. I'm just gonna go just turn that back off for right now. Maybe do the normal map. Just gonna go into the specular pass or whatever to turn off diffuse to try to color correct the I'm just doing the power. This is like a gamma. If you want like a really tight spec, you can also go the other way. Less than 1 to get it a little bit broader. Could be cool, maybe even without the diffuse. Just keep it super minimal, maybe. We're gonna try like desaturating it. All right, it's something. It's just to get it away from like a super default feeling environment, like a template starting scene or whatever. I'm also gonna go it like a lower. I want to go the other way, I think. Trying to get more repetitions of the texture. Am I going the right way? Right? This is bizarre. It was all just running together. So the grain of this wood is like giving you a lot of sense of scale for the scene or whatever. So it's somewhat important to give people an impression of how big those boxes are or whatever. I might go bigger with the light. Just to try to get softer shadows. There's more of like indoor lights or like a diffuse light source. I'm just gonna try moving the camera around and seeing what happens. I'll just make a copy of the current view in case I want to go back to it. Yeah, I think maybe a lower angle could be better. Do all the bells and whistles, depth of field. Is it working? I feel like it's super subtle. I think it's just starting to kick in. You can see that stuff getting blurry. What are you guys thinking about this monochromatic? Add some color. Want the color? Yeah, I don't know. It's was looking pretty clean with just black and white. I feel like all my I just have a habit of going out of control with the color. Yeah, the white was pretty crispy. I feel like if anything with the color, you might want to do like a ramp, like a palette. Yeah, I think I'm gonna stay with this. It's kind of like a gallery. I just added the floor to make it feel a little bit integrated, like give it a sense of something. But yeah, I think if you wanted like a color palette, maybe doing some really like dark desaturated ones and then doing a different thing for each floor, that could be a cool way to do it. I don't have the attributes, so I'm not going to take the time to set it up right now, so I'm just going to leave it how it is. I might be able to get a little bit more olive green. Yeah, the olive was pretty cool. It's like a olive green is like the toy soldier, the plastic soldier. Reminds me of that material a little bit. I'm trying to work with the spec a little bit more. You start to do that and you get like just a little bit more dynamics. It's like things are less flat. The more you rely on diffuse to get you to white, the flatter everything will kind of look. So keeping the specks on the edges, I think, will make things look a little crisp. Yeah, I think for right now, I'm just going to stick with black and white. I don't know if I can get a little bit more out of the lighting. The Rubik's Cube skeleton. Seagull Rush, how's it going? Came in very close to the end. Right in time. Oh no. Yeah, I don't know how much I want to crunch down this. I think it's cool to keep some of this stuff. Just spend an entire day trying out colors, dialing lights. Yeah, it's easy to. I need to kind of do that a little bit more to get better at it. I'm always spending way too much time in the simulation and then just rushing through stuff at the end. I think I'm gonna rotate the light. I'm gonna try to get so even more shadow contrast. It's pretty cool. Looks interesting. Yeah, it's a pretty cool one. So I was just modeling like a simple box geometry and then emitting it or spawning it with an RBD. If you want to, you can, if you use the RBD bullet solver, this has the option on it. You can do emit RBDs and it will automatically pump whatever you feed into it. But for this case, I don't know, I'm a little bit more comfortable working in the DOP network with RBDs still. I'm just gonna go into my template piece. Just tweak the modeling of this a little bit more. Might want to do maybe the blur after the subdivide. I don't know. Try something a little bit more crisp. Yeah, I think it got a little too thin. I think with this second extrusion, getting more thickness in it you get better shadows that are gives you a better sense of the structure and everything overall. So yeah, the textures aren't going to be linked anymore, but you could see what website I got them from. If you pull in this latest scene, you'd see close to where I am right now. I might do. Let me just see what happens with a super low quality render. Just mashed all the settings down pretty far. Just trying to get like just a couple seconds per frame. How do you change the temperature of the light? Like the reference? With Redshift, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Redshift has a temperature mode. With the Houdini color picker, there's a temperature slider for like TMI, I think is the color. Like instead of HSV or RGB, you can do, I think it's called TMI. That's like temperature magenta, or I don't know, something like that. So here with Redshift, you could just do temperature. So if you're trying to match to an actual product, if you're trying to match to a reference, usually do color, yeah, and then this is the TMI, so warm or cool, like that. Then they also have this temperature. This is like black body, but it's kind of the same. I think it's meant more like for pyro. But you could also click this button. If you click it at the color wheel or whatever enough times, you'll get to the TMI. So visually picking a temperature, I find it's easier to do it that way instead of just purely picking the actual like Kelvin degrees or whatever. You would use both as well if you want. And then I think with this color, forgot how I don't remember. Yeah, I think here you right click and you can get some different things that actually tell you like studio, xenon. These are actually like products or skies or like a little match flame. These are actually meant to be that measured value or whatever, so that can be useful as well if you really want to get technical with things. Oh no, it's falling down. You were thinking this one. This might be the magenta or something. It's possible the spotlight as well, like the color, the temperature changes over the cone of the spotlight. But yeah, it can be pretty difficult to really nail like. This is definitely just warmer, like incandescent, the filament light bulbs or whatever. But yeah, it could be cool to get closer to one of these gallery setups with like planks of wood or white walls or something like that. Yeah, it was a pretty cool result with falling, like as soon as some of them link up and some of them form little chains or links or something like that. I did spend a good amount of time doing the collision geometry, like so that they could actually link or bond together. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So like just the amount of boxes that you're emitting would determine the structural integrity of this or something. So playing around with like the size, the amount of the boxes, and how many you're creating. Like there's also some stuff I was doing like jittering them off of the skeleton or the scaffold. But yeah, it was pretty fun results today. So whoops, click the wrong buttons over here. Proper cool zone. Yeah, so you could get the latest stream right there. I'll probably do a higher quality, higher fidelity render. This is like 480 by 480, so it's super low resolution and pretty noisy shadows. But yeah, thanks everyone for giving me advice throughout the way, bashing this out. We'll be back Sunday with the Vex Express. All aboard. For right now, we're just going to send everyone over to Blake Catherine's stream again. She's doing some pretty cool environments, it looks like. She's doing a really nice, like, vertigo style zoom. The Alfred Hitchcock dolly zoom or whatever. She was doing that with some animation recently or whatever. But yeah, going to send everyone over there with a raid. She's always doing some really cool Redshift stuff, but with Cinema 4D.